Hello, everybody. This is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. Man, it's been raining today, but I just had to get out and take a little hike. And I've been thinking about, I had the opportunity, and I'm not sure if it was destiny, fate, or just pure luck, but I had a chance to run around and get to know and learn from five of the greatest pool hustlers, gamblers, mental manipulationists, but really genuinely good guys. You know, they all actually cared about people a lot more than some of the doctors and lawyers, and especially, like politicians and people like that. And quite honestly, I've met police officers that are way more corrupt than these pool hustlers I'm talking about. And I'm going to tell you about one in particular that I've mentioned before, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more detail because he is the one that taught me how to act. I wasn't trained by Hollywood, or I didn't go to school for acting. I learned it on the road, and especially with the man I'm going to talk about. And his name was Weldon. They called him Junior Weldon Rogers, the second best one-handed player in the country. He always said Sergio from California was the best. But I saw Weldon play one-handed, jacked up, without touching the table, as good as I think it could possibly be played. He could play one pocket. I mean, I don't think I could give him more than maybe 8-6 if I played two-handed and he played one-handed, one pocket. That's how good he played, because he just didn't make any mistakes. But anyway, let's take a little walk and I'll share some stories here. This is where I am right now. Beautiful. See, it's a little muddy, but a little mud never hurt anybody, did it? Got my staff. I do a martial arts routine just about every day that on my YouTube channel I show how I use that and teach people how to have a more powerful, precise, consistent stroke using this 7-pound staff, or 7-foot staff. It's not 7 pounds, but it is pretty heavy. So, the pool stick, it's just not heavy enough to change your stroke. You have to have weights, like they use ankle weights and wrist weights for different things, because that extra weight helps you to reprogram your muscle memory. And the pool stroke's the same way. Most people are actually doing the pool stroke backwards. Their wrist is releasing forward, like they're flipping the cue, and that is why they have to use such a light grip. If you've got a correct stroking motion, you can use a firmer grip, not tight, but firm, like you would hold a hammer, exactly like you would hold a hammer and hammer a nail. I grew up on a lumber yard, so I was hammering nails since I was like probably 4 or 5 years old. So I had that natural hammering stroke that I applied to pool. And by the time I was 9, I ran 2 racks of 8-ball on a 9-foot table. By the time I was 12, I won a regional tournament in Missouri, beating all the adults in that area. And I also ran 15 balls in order in rotation on a 9-foot table when I was 12 years old. That's still difficult to do to this day. I have a video on my YouTube channel where I do that, and I do it with a touch of inside, which I'm the one that kind of brought that to fruition and showed people that a lot of the top champions were cueing the ball slightly to the inside, which gives them more margin of error, because the human mind, body, and eyes weren't made to play pool. So what I teach is ways that you can adapt the body and mind and eyes so that it's like you were made to play pool and become what I call a pool playing machine, where you have a routine. The pre-shot routine and the fundamentals, there's different levels of it. So, I mean, people talk about that like there's just one way. I'm going to teach the fundamentals or the pre-shot routine. But yeah, that's not true. There's different levels, and most of the ones that I see online and that are readily available are not the same level that I use and other champion level players use. And what happens is those type fundamentals will get you to a level, which is pretty good. You'll be able to run the table, you'll be able to run racks, but you won't be able to beat top-notch players in tournaments because under pressure especially, look at this. Little bridge going over. It's beautiful. Yeah, this is how I get away from the world. I used to run, major nightclubs. I had a major nightclub called Carson's Live in Dallas, which was number one in the state of Texas for alcohol sales. That's public information. We once did an $18,000 hour. We did $14,000 hours fairly often, but if you've ever been in that business, you know what it takes to generate $18,000 in 1 hour. Now that's just not just alcohol, but that was cover charge, bottle service, alcohol, food combined. But anyway, let me get back to the pool and Weldon Rogers. When I was in Marion, Indiana with a guy named Chuck Bradley, we were running around, and he was who I was with when I played Vernon Elliott, the Faceless Man, and I've told you about him teaching me while I was playing him a lot of the higher level strategies of two-shot shootout, which is the same type of rules that I use in my new refined version, Shooter Dare. And it's, a much more mental, cognitive type game like One Pocket, but it's a lot faster. And, I was just at a One Pocket tournament, and they were averaging an hour a game. A race to 5 was taking 5 hours. The longest game in Shooter Dare, the average is probably going to be 4 or 5 minutes. I think if you had a really long game, it'd maybe be 6 or 7 minutes, but that's it. It's over pretty quick, but you get all the exciting, entertaining, and strategic parts of One Pocket, but in bite-sized portions. So you get to experience it, and then you go to a next game, and then you experience it, and you go to the next game. So your knowledge base increases so fast. And when I played Weldon, I was with Chuck at a little bar, and we matched up a game where he played one-handed and I played two-handed, and I gave him the 6-7 in the break, which, come to find out, was impossible. Nobody could give Weldon that game. But I did, and we played two-shot shootout, but he made a stipulation that it was 2 fouls by the same person. So that means if I rolled out and he didn't like it, he could re-roll out, and then we'd both be on one, and then, I could either shoot the shot or make him shoot it. And he did that because of the one-handed, because he didn't want, to get caught, he thought, in a rollout where the guy was rolling out really tough shots, like on the rail. It was harder to shoot for him off the rail than someone making a bridge. But I ended up, kind of figuring that one out, and this is how it happened. After about the third game, I went over to Chuck, and I was like, man, this guy plays one-handed better than anybody I've ever seen. We didn't know who he was. And I said, I don't think I can beat him. And we were playing a set. So I had money locked up, and Chuck was like, well, I guess you're going to have to figure it out. Chuck was great to have in your corner. He always knew what to say. So what I figured out was there was one shot that he couldn't do one-handed that I could do two, for sure, and that was jump shots. So when I rolled out, I would roll out to just be, jump over a piece of the of the object ball. Well, he let me shoot a time or two, and I would jump it, make it, and run out. And so he knew he couldn't do that. So then he had to get into a position where I would roll out those shots, and he'd have to re-roll out. Well, he was still up against a pretty tough scenario because I'm such a shot maker, and I'm playing two-handed and he's playing one. So I ended up beating him that day, or that night. I think I won about 2,000, 2,500. Enough that he was pissed off. I know that, because I don't think he'd ever been beat like that. And he told me later, he said that was the best thing that could have happened to him, because I taught him about that jump shot. So he said he won like over 50,000 the next month going around and matching up that type game, but he'd stipulate there's no jump shots. And in shoot or dare, there's no jump shots. See, so I used that knowledge and a lot of my other knowledge, pretty much everything I've ever learned in pool, to put together shoot or dare, and actually put it in a formula and worked it out on paper. So shoot or dare isn't a game that I think benefits me for some reason. I just really, really like it because I created a way to bring out the best components in pool, whether it's the shot making or the battle between the two players for the first shot, and you're always going to have to run the balls in rotation just like 9-ball. But the emphasis is on the beginning of every game. That's how come, we're going to get it back on a major TV platform like I did in the 90s. And now the time is right to do that, I believe. So anyway, so I beat Weldon. And then I didn't want to play him anymore. I could see that, and he wouldn't have played me anymore without stipulating no jump shots. And I could see that was the only way I could beat him. So that was a stalemate, and he ended up beating another guy up there in the next 3 days out of about 11,000. Doug Smith, who I actually was on the road with, and Chuck was on the road with, and Strong Arm John. I mean, we all kind of ran around together and split up and did a lot of teams. Anytime there was 3 of us in a town or a pool room, it was brutal. That's why they talk about conspiracies. I mean, that I've been a part of one several times, because it takes 2 or more people to really make money, whatever you're doing. And that doesn't mean illegal stuff. That just means anything. Every big company or corporation has a board of directors which are conspiring together to make profit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just been kind of demonized, and if somebody says you believe in conspiracies, you're some kind of a nut job, insane, uneducated fool. Which that's exactly what I wanted people to think I was when I was hustling pool, because if they did, at the end of the night, their pockets would be empty. And it's ego, I mean, I don't think anybody's a fool. I had a bar manager at my club, well, that high volume club I'm talking about, who was super sharp. And he told me one day, he said, CJ, don't ever think you're the smartest man in the room. These bartenders we have, and managers and waitresses, servers, are super smart too, and they have all their own abilities. See, we had such a high-class nightclub. We got the cream of the crop when it came to the service staff in Dallas, Texas. Everybody wanted to work at Carson's because they made the most money, and we ran a really tight ship, highly organized, very professional. My GM had a background with Bennigan's and McDonald's and TGI Fridays, which TGI Fridays really had the best bar training system that I can imagine. So my bar manager was with Fridays. Several of my high-level employees through the next few years, we tried to get ex-Fridays employees that had been trained by them, because we knew they'd be good. Here's this trail. It's pretty strong. I didn't know if it was going to keep raining or not. So anyway, back to Weldon. I was in a place where I won quite a bit of money, and I hung around that place. I'm not going to mention it. I have in the past, but in this case, I'm just not going to mention the names. You guys can figure it out if you know. But I'd beat the guy out of about 6,000, and my partner flew home for a little while, and I stayed around there. Well, I ended up getting stuck up at gunpoint. I was outside at a picnic table with two other guys, and this guy came out of the trees with a gun and stuck us up right there. And I could tell they were after me. And I had $5,200 in my front right pocket, but it was in a leather money clip. So it's kind of dark out there. So he, said, "Put your F&F, M&F, whatever it is, money on the table, or I'll blow your brains out." Well, I took that $5,200 out, flipped 200s out, put it on the table, and slid it under my leg. Well, to confirm that he was after me, he put the gun in my ribs and he said, "Stand up. I know that's not all your money." And he frisked me, and I had a wallet, but it didn't have any money in it. So he took it and looked and threw it on the ground. Well, that dark money clip he didn't see on the picnic table. So right then, a car was driving down this gravel road. This is a little bar out in the middle of nowhere. And he said, "Don't any of you move or I'll blow your heads off." And, he's cussing and everything. And so he goes back into the trees. And right as he turns, I had that money in my hand. I ran for the door, and I'm zigzagging, as quick as I could. And I could just feel that bullet going in my back. I could just anticipate it. That's happened one other time, man. When somebody's got a gun on you, or you're putting a move to get away from them, I don't know about anybody else, but I could feel that bullet. It happened one other time in the back of my club. Somebody robbed me with a gun, and I got away from them. And as I got in the door, I hit the guy. I did a move on him. And again, I could feel that bullet. Unfortunately, it didn't actually come. So I figured out later, talking to some people, that the owner of the bar had me robbed. That I'd beat him out of that money, and he was passed out that night, or at least acted like it, on the couch in there, which was odd. Like I said, I put the pieces together pretty quick and figured it out. So he actually did that. And what's funny is I stayed with him during that time. So I was staying in the guy's house that had me robbed. I mean, he was double treacherous, and this world is double treacherous. That's why when people hear about some of the bigger conspiracies, they say, why would they lie? Why would they do that? Well, man, look at what people will do for $5,000. What do you think they'll do for $1 million, really, or $1 billion, or $1 trillion? There's no limit. So if you ever hear somebody say, "Why would they lie?" or "Why would they do that?" or, man, I got news for him. It's being done right now. So Weldon and I were in that area like a couple years later, and the guy was still there gambling. So I had, kind of a vendetta against him, and so Weldon and I conspired to take him off, So what I did was I went into his place, and he was happy to see me, of course, he was maybe get to rob me again or something. But I, played it off and acted like I was happy to see him, and, caught up on all the stuff and played some pool, and anyway, I stayed there the next day and went in, and then I left to go somewhere with another guy, and Weldon came in. Now, Weldon came in. This guy was used to pool players coming in because a lot of the road players knew about him. So it wasn't a red flag or anything. Weldon came in and asked about gambling. So the guy, you know, played Weldon, and they played for like 20 a game, and they might have went to 50 a game, and Weldon's just stalling with the guy. He's not trying to win. As a matter of fact, he lost on purpose. So then he left before I came back. And then, you know, of course, the guy tells me about it. He says, man, this guy had a pocket full of money. I wish you would have been here. Blah, blah, blah. Well, so Weldon came back the next day, and the guy called me immediately because I was in the area, and I went over. Now, I played Weldon, and I ended up beating him out of like 2,000 or 3,000. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but you know, Weldon lost to me on purpose. I gave him the 8, and then the 7 and the 8, and then the 7, 8 and the break, and you know, like I said, I ended up, I think, probably 3,000 by the time the smoke cleared. So I'd already kind of positioned my escape because I said I had to go, you know, to another spot to gamble, and so I left. So now Weldon comes back, and the guy's already seen him play. So he knows how he plays, and he watched him play lose that 3,000, which is no nominal amount of money. So now he plays Weldon. And I was camped out about 50 miles from there. You know, we wanted to get enough distance between us so that he couldn't be followed. And Weldon proceeds to beat him out of that like 3,500. I think he won a little bit more than he lost to me, allegedly. And came back to the room and went back the next day and beat him out of another like 4,500. And you know, he's just toying with the guy, and he's saving the one-handed for last. So then he goes back and he beats the guy and ends up playing him one-handed, with him getting like the 7, 8 and a break or something, which is just a joke, and beat him out of like over 5,000. So you know, by the time the smoke cleared, I think you know, he'd won a little bit over 12,000, and he's coming back, you know, and we're cutting up the money, and Weldon could sense that you know, he was going to get robbed if he stayed there any longer. So we left with the 12,000 and went down the road in our merry way. But I was talking about the acting. See, when I was playing Weldon, there was a situation that came up that I deliberately called a bad hit on him. And he acted like he was mad, of course. And I stuck to my guns, and we got into a verbal fight that was so authentic that when I saw him later, I thought he was mad at me. He was such a good actor. And we laid that down so well. See, we had to make sure that the guy didn't put the pieces together, that we were together. And when we did that, there's nobody in the world that would have thought that we were actually in together. Because what he showed me there was, you know, the best acting is to actually become it. And I've said in other videos, I had trouble lying because I was brought up, you know, well. My mother taught me not to lie and not to steal, and you know, and so when I got to be a pool hustler, it was kind of a conflict. So Weldon's the one that told me to adapt to these different characters. I became Mike from Marion, Indiana. I was Chris from Missouri when I was around Missouri, in case they caught me and thought I was CJ. I could always say that Chris was what C stood for. And then I was Butch from Tennessee. And I've told stories about Omaha John, my partner, listening to him talk about who the best young player in the world or in the country was. And the three were Butch from Tennessee, Mike from Indiana, and Chris from Missouri. And Omaha John said he had to get up, and this was in Tupelo, Mississippi, I think, at a tournament, and had to go to the bathroom because he started laughing so hard, because they were all me and he knew it. I'd use those names with him, and I became those characters. And lived that life. And then several years ago, I made a commitment to go completely the other way and help people see when they're getting hustled. Because I know all the moves. Not all, but there's only a certain amount of them. There's bait and switch, and there's, there's just always like a magician. It's always whatever they point to, it's something else. And that just holds true now. Anything that I hear, like all the media programming agree on and focus on, I know it's not true. And I will always look to go the other way, and it helps me put together the dots, because if you know what somebody is saying is a lie, that's good information. And I used to go in these pool rooms with these triple smart hustlers, and I knew they'd lie to me. Everything they said was a lie, but I would still ask them a lot of questions, because whatever they said was good information, because I knew it was a 180 from that. It was the opposite of that. What they're saying was inverted. So if they told me not to play somebody, I knew I should play them. If they told me to play somebody, I knew I shouldn't play them. It's as simple as that. Bait and switch. You bait somebody, and then you switch because it's inverted all along. Anyway, this is CJ Wiley out here in the beautiful, man, it looks like the jungle out here. And I'm in Texas. I'm getting ready to start heading to North Carolina to give some lessons. If anybody's in between Dallas, Texas and Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm going to make some stops. Get a hold of me, and I'll give you some personal training. I'll show you the secrets that I use to become the level of player that I am, and then you'll be able to recognize it in other professionals too. Once you can see it, they say we only recognize what we're familiar with. Once I make you familiar with this stuff, you'll be able to see it, you'll be able to do it. It will take you 2 or 3 weeks, I always say don't give up before the miracle happens, because I do train people and they go back to what they were doing the next day or two. And I tell them over and over, you have to practice this. It's going to be a little bit awkward for the first 3 days, but that's it. Isn't it worth it to go through 3 days of learning something new that's a little awkward? That's how you rode a bike. That's how you learned. Instead of playing the next 10 years, 3 hours a day and never get any better. I guarantee you'll get better if you build the foundation that I'll help you build. Just like building a house or any kind of structure. It's contingent on the foundation, how high you can build it and what it looks like. The symmetry of it. It's the same thing with a pool stroke. When I'm watching a pool player, I look at their feet, their hands, and what they're doing. I can tell what their body's doing by their feet. They can't hide it. That's the foundation. And then how it affects their body, their feet, and then I can tell how good they play. Anyway, that's enough for today. If you want to know more about my fundamental systems and techniques that I use, go to cjwiley.com. If you want to learn about my new game, Shoot or Dare, it's shootordare.com. Like Truth or Dare, but on a pool table. Anyway, this is CJ. Till next time, remember, the game is the teacher.